Good day to you all. Have you ever wanted a lightweight mouse? Well, here on Kit Guru, we might have the thing just for you. My name's Christina, and today we're looking at Dream Machine's DM6 Holey S. It's coming in at 69 grams and around £38 here in the UK at this very moment. Let's see if Dream Machines can make our dreams come true with this Holey mouse. So packaging wise, simple design here with a picture on the front and some key features on the back. But then when you pick the box up, it feels like there is nothing in there. I thought someone was like having a joke with me, sent me an empty box to review, but rest assured, underneath the foam layer and the manual, it is there. The DM6 Holey is feather light. It's actually incredible to feel in comparison to, say, my own mouse, which is easily double the weight. So before we go into the looks of this one, if you have trypophobia, and I think that's how you say it, you might want to look away now. Holes, they're really everywhere on this mouse. It reminds me a little bit of honeycomb, a multi-piece shell with the sides, top, bottom and buttons separate from each other. And look out, because even the underneath is full of these little hexagons. Of course, this isn't new, as we have seen a number of mice hit the market with the honeycomb shell, including the glorious Model O and Model D, as well as the Final Mouse Ultralight series, to give just a few examples. But Dream Machines is clearly keeping up with the trend and trying to make the mouse as light as possible. To me, it looks like a Zowie EC clone. The right side flares out slightly with an inward curve on the left. Very much an ergonomic shape there. The material is a matte plastic on the top of the mouse, and it immediately started to attract grease from the moment I touched it. So this could cause it to become shiny and wear over time. We also have the usual side buttons on the left-hand side of the mouse, as well as a DPI button on the middle of the mouse there. You also have a light that shines through the right top side of the mouse to show you which DPI stage you're on. It is really bright and shines right through one of those little hexagons. I could see that light in my eyes for probably a good 10 seconds after looking at it. Don't look directly into the lights, kids. Talking of lights, there's no RGB as such, apart from the aforementioned light. You may love or hate this fact, but I can understand this because, let's face it, there isn't really many places to put them. The one small thing that was a little frustrating for me is that the DPI button doesn't really have an up and down facility. It just kind of cycles through those presets. So if you overshoot the DPI level you're looking for, you have to cycle all the way back through the others to get to it. This is a small inconvenience, and for the price, I wouldn't consider it a major pitfall at all, but worth a mention. The buttons have a stippled satin plastic effect, which adds even more variation of texture to this mouse. The scroll wheel has some nice grip running around it that consists of these little dots made in the rubber here. Underneath, we have a textured and shinier plastic that is accompanied by 4 small glide pads, the sensor and the 2 buttons, which we will talk about a bit later. The cable is a classic shoelace cable, and if you have watched any of my other reviews, you'll probably know already what I'm about to say. I'm not a big fan of this. It feels a bit cheap and flimsy to me. I would like to stress though that a lot of people like these ultralight cables, and including my partner. This is just my personal preference. I'm not a huge fan. When compared to the Death Adder Mini, for example, it is similar but a little thinner. Just as flexible and almost identical in braid and texture, and to be honest, it really isn't hard to get rid of those pesky kinks. Let's not forget the little Dream Machines logo on the top of the mouse in the little cavity that runs up the middle of the top shell there. That's a nice little touch. So how does it feel? Good question. I would say odd. I find Holey mice really weird. They feel odd to me. You do get used to it, but with all those little holes, it just feels really bizarre. I'm not hating it, but it is very different. There are no sharp edges or flex from this mouse though, which I'm pleased to say, and when you squeeze the device there is no give, and the side buttons do not activate when you squeeze it from the sides. Hardly any rattle at all as well, apart from a really small sound of maybe a switch being shaken inside or something, but minute. Dream Machines have done well to keep all of those little edges smooth, and the body is really strong considering this is a 69 gram mouse that's riddled with holes. The hump is a relatively medium height and it tapers off quite drastically to a flatter back end. In fingertip grip, it is comfortable and leaves the hand level with no wrist strain. I use fingertip grip and it works really well there too. It's super comfortable, well supported by the width and the height of the body. Palm grip is also well supported as there is room for the whole hand to completely sit on top of the mouse. Similarly to fingertip grip, I feel that the width of the device means there is something to really hold on to. It's comfortable without having your whole hand engulfing the device. My hands are pretty small though. The size of the mouse is 129 by 66 by 40 millimeters. So obviously this may vary depending on your own hand size. Durability wise, this thing is pretty rigid. There is no engagement of the side buttons when squeezing the sides as mentioned earlier, and there is no give when pressing down on the top either. Moving on to the sensor. So it's a Pixart 3389, and I do have to mention there is a brother device, the DM6 Holey without the S, that has the Pixart 3360. And while I'm on the subject, the only difference really between those two mice, the sensor, so just something to consider. The Holey S though has Wano blue shell switches, and these will last to around 20 million clicks, a good few years of heavy usage there. They feel super clicky, and compared to the Death Adder version 2 Mini, which has the Razer optical switches, it is a huge difference and makes the Razer optical switches almost feel lacking in clickiness in comparison, in my opinion. The click actuation force is on the higher end of the scale, so slightly heavier than your typical Omron switch per se. I would say it's a really satisfying actuation though. When you press that switch down, you certainly know that you have actuated that switch. There's no pre-travel and only a slight amount of post-travel from the mouse's left and right click, and I really like the weight of the buttons in general, but the mouse wheel however feels a little bit loose. It doesn't have that overall defined steps when you're scrolling. It's kind of easy to overshoot that. I would have liked a tighter wheel resistance, but of course again I know that's personal preference. I'll let you guys decide in the comments. The side buttons have no pre-travel at all, but have quite a lot of post-travel. They feel pretty tight upon actuation, but you can carry on through past that actuation point and it feels a little bit mushy after that. However, if you just press it lightly, it's a much better and cleaner actuation force, probably how you're supposed to use it. I'm just being picky. One small gripe is that the glide was not all I had hoped for. And then I realised that there were little plastic stickers over the glide pads. Okay, don't laugh at me guys. So I removed them and my experience obviously totally changed. Being a lightweight mouse, you would expect it to glide really easily and fast across the mouse mat. This is most definitely the case. It is so easy to move around that mouse mat. I noticed no friction, scratchiness from these feet, and they do have those rounded edges. This can help reduce friction compared to some of the flat feet. I would like to point out though that there are no feet included as an extra in this box though. This mouse is exactly what they say on the tin. Featherweight, it really is as if you're playing with a cloud under your hand. It's just 69 grams, and I really must stress that I thought a mouse that is say 90 grams was light enough for me, which is obviously, I know, subjective, but I'm used to the Razer Basilisk, which is 107 grams. So upon using such a fast and lightweight mouse, really it had a huge impact on me. It's probably a little too fast for me for that reason. Now we'll do a sound test against the Death Adder version 2 Mini. So we've been talking about buttons for a while here, but let's deal with those little buttons underneath the mouse that I mentioned earlier. The first one on the left is for changing the LED in the top right of the mouse on and off. Second one on the right is for lift-off distance. You've got 1, 2 and 3 millimeters to choose from. On the lift-off distance button, you can see what setting you have set it to by this little LED indicator above. We tested the lift-off distance settings, and most people would want to keep it on say a 1 or 2 millimeter, but 3 millimeter can be useful if you want to swap in some custom feet, let's say. This means you can change these settings to your desired game or task at hand easily without any software. This is awesome that you can change these settings so easily, as a lot of mice don't really have that on the fly, but these buttons were not explained in the manual at all, and I had to turn to good old-fashioned fiddling around to find out what they did. Moving on, let's talk about DPI. So the default stages are 400, 800, 1200, 2400 and 4800, and it goes all the way up to 16,000. This is incredibly fast, as I always hover around the 800 to 1200 mark. Anything after that is just straight up madness to me personally, but let me know down in the comments the fastest DPI that you can successfully use. This leads me nicely onto software, as I thought this may shed some light on what you can and can't do with this mouse. Other than that though, starting from the main screen, you can remap all the buttons including the left click, which is a rarity because the left click is not usually remappable because you can't operate your computer if you miss it. But I don't know. On this page, you can also change the onboard DPI stages. Here, using the sliders, you can't disable stages, but you can change the color of the LED that shows when you change to them. On the settings tab, you can change the mouse speed, double click speed, and lift off distance. When you press the lift off distance button on the underneath of the mouse, it doesn't change the level in the software visually. However, when you press the DPI button, for example, that does change the setting in the software. It would have been nice to see a visual representation in real time of that lift off distance button. And this is the final page where you can see scroll speed. On the right hand side, there's a macro editor where you can create macros and also choose how many times the macro repeats itself. Creating macros is fairly straightforward, but you must click on the macro name to record the macro and also return to the previous screen to assign it to a button. You can also create new profiles, but you can't assign the profile change to a button. You must change it through the software. So to conclude, the software is fairly underwhelming and basic. Not everything is listed with precise increments for you to fully understand what you're changing it to and from, but there you go, it's one of those things. At least it has software, right? So let's talk about gaming. The last thing I wanted to do was test it with some fast-paced mouse action gaming. So I went in for the FPS shoot 'em up Call of Duty, and the low sloping back of the mouse for me made it a little off kilt, I'm gonna be honest. This may be due to my preferred grip style, which is fingertip grip. A lot of my hand remained on the mat, making my movements a little sluggish. Now, I know some of you in the comments said that you prefer pinky and thumb drag, but for me, it was a little too much and it did interfere with my precision. I know you guys like it, don't worry. Other than that, the responsiveness was great, no jitter or lag, so overall, not too bad. So let's go over some pros and cons to round up all that information. It's really light as expected, but also unexpected, for me personally. Fantastic value for money, lots of textures for great visual and sensory experience, light indicators make it easy to see what setting you're on, nice size and ergonomically comfortable. All grip styles are pretty comfortable, great feedback and resistance in the buttons, no flex, no rough edges. The cable is lightweight and kink resistant. On the fly lift off distance, some cons now. Mattified top material is a bit of a grease magnet. Odd feeling at times due to those little holes, but again, that's my personal preference, you might like that. Scroll wheel is a little on the light side, I would have liked it a bit more tactile. DPI cycle button instead of up and down was a bit of a con for me. I would have rather to go up and down on the DPI rather than have to go all the way back round again. And that low sloping back end does leave a lot of the hand on the mat depending on what grip you use. My conclusion is that the DM6 Holey S by Dream Machine is most definitely worth the price tag, but I wouldn't be paying much more for it. The specs and the build quality is good, the design is pretty comfortable and accommodating to most grip styles, but there is that slight drag due to the back end slope. Let us know down in the comments what you think, and whilst you're there, make sure you hit that sub button, press that little bell, and make sure you check our website daily for tech news. And also, don't forget the merch, there's some cool stuff on there. I'm Christina, this is Kit Guru, I'll see you next time.